Finally, the wait is over. It's completely appropriate to reach into your closet and grab that chainmail and put it on to listen to today's episode. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith, and this is the Q&A. My agenda is simple. Each week, I plan to bring you in-depth insight into the creative process of storytelling. And folks, we have a cool one for you today. We have writer-director Petr Jkl with us to discuss his latest film, Medieval. Now, Medieval is in theaters right now. It'll eventually be coming to VOD and rental as well, but it's in theaters right now. It's an absolutely gorgeous outdoor shoot with a lot of fantastic action scenes. So I think it's totally worth masking up, going to your local theater and finding a safe way to see it if you feel comfortable. And what's so much fun about today's episode is Petr was very forthcoming about his creative process and what it took to get this film made. So I know you'll dig this episode. And speaking of things to dig, Backstory Magazine turns 10. That's right. We survived a decade and we couldn't have done it without your help. And the other good news is that we just released a new issue. Yes, issue 47, our summer issue, is live and there is so much great stuff in it. I hope you check out the table contents to see it all, but we have Emmy Awards contenders ranging from Stranger Things, Better Call Saul, Station 11, Barry, Hacks, and What We Do in the Shadows, to summer movies, to new scripts for you to read, to an interview with director John Carpenter on the 40th anniversary of The Thing. Man, there are so many great things in this issue, and I hope you check it out. If you have never read us before, you can, of course, test drive us over at backstory.net and read the free issue, or you could use the iPad app Backstory, where you could read the free issue there as well. And if you like what you see, and I hope you do, you could consider becoming a subscriber. And to sweeten the deal, I want to give you discount coupon code SAVE5. That will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription. The code will work at backstory.net, and you enter it there in your checkout cart, but it'll give you access to both backstory.net and the iPad app as well. So, it's 2 for 1. You get access to both easily. But look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and iTunes and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube channel, which is all the Zoomcast go of these interviews. So you could see us do the interviews. You don't have to just hear us, but it would really mean a lot to me to have you subscribe to my passion project. So thanks for considering. But now, without any further ado, let's jump right into our conversation with writer-director Petr Jkl about his latest film in theaters now, Medieval. Okay, Petr, it's great to see you. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Well, we're gonna get into talking about Medieval in a little while, but I want to give people a sense of who you are. One thing that I found interesting researching you a bit is that you are the defender of judo for Czechoslovakia. You went to the Olympics, for God's sakes. Tell us about that and getting into martial arts at what I would presume to be an early age.
Yeah. I mean, that was my first life, because now I'm living the second one. So my first life started, of course, when I was born, but later on, I started to do judo. And, I did it because of my father, because he was the first Czech Olympian in Munich, 1972. And I always wanted, just to get to the Olympic Games. And I actually wanted to win Olympic Games. So I did everything for that. I was training hard. I was doing just like whatever, everything what was necessary to get there. And finally, in 2000 in Sydney, I was there at Olympic Games, and I didn't win. I was 13, but I super enjoyed it, and that was the end of my career because I got actually injured a year before. I had 2 dislocated discs, broken vertebra. They told me that I have to stop immediately. And if I don't, I'm going to end up on a wheelchair. So I decided, not to listen to the doctors. And, I just wanted to fulfill my dream. And I was fighting, and actually I was in hospitals, and then I was going straight to competitions and then back to the hospitals.
Wow.
And at that time, I found out, that 60% of sport is here, and that's just I had, I wasn't trained enough, at that time, I had just I wasn't ready, but my head was ready 100%. And that's why I was winning, even with people I lost before. And it was super amazing experience because, it helped me also for the second life, which is the film like.
Yeah, and in your film in Medieval, the fights looked fantastic. So I mean, you could tell that you have a background in martial arts for sure. But eventually that led to stunt work for you, and you had worked with Luc Besson on Joan of Arc, and also Rob Cohen on 2012's Triple X. Talk about kind of as an actor getting in and having your eyes opened, which obviously led to your career as a filmmaker because Rob Cohen ended up producing for you.
It was actually exactly in 2000. The Triple X was shot in Prague, and it was a huge production here. I went to casting, and Rob chose me, and he gave me pretty cool part. It was one of the main villains of the movie. And I super enjoyed it. It was a dream for me. And right before that, I got another part, in Bad Company with Anthony Hopkins, and then, Eurotrip with Matt Damon, and, Alien vs. Predator. It was just fun for me. I was just like, I super enjoyed it. And we became friends with Rob Cohen, and he helped me a lot, because he produced my second movie I directed. And also Luc Besson, he helped me also a lot because I was, like 3 months on his Jean of Arc, which was also shot in the Czech Republic. He just came to me one day and he said, "Hey, Peter, I'm gonna help you." And I said, and my English was, really, really not good. And he said, "I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna get you a manager. I'm gonna, help you in the US. I think you can act. You can do this. You can do that." I was like, "Oh, okay." And then he called me after the shooting, called me home, Luc Besson. And I was like, wow. I answered the phone and I was, "Hello," in Czech. And he was speaking English. And I was like, okay, Luc Besson, it's a joke. Who is it? In Czech. And he hung up. And I was like, and suddenly, and again, somebody called me and they said, "Hey, Peter, what are you doing?" There was a French translator from the movie and said, "I have Luc Besson next to me. He wants to help your career as an actor, whatever you want to do there." And I was like, no, you gotta be kidding. I still thought it's a joke. And then she said, no, really, listen to this. If you learn English, he's gonna help you. And then I understood that it's serious and it's real. So I started to learn English, and I learned, like over 2 years. And then he called me and he said, "Hey, Peter, I've got a job for you. You have to meet Ridley Scott in London. My wife, Mila Jovovich, is going to introduce you to him. And he's doing some, movie called Gladiator." Because I was shooting Jean of Arc in 1998. It was like, when I was doing judo. I said, "Hey, perfect. When is it? And he gave me some date, and I said, "Oh my God, sorry, but I cannot get there because I have world championships in judo, and it's a nomination for Olympic Games." And he was like, "What?" I said, "Yeah, I cannot get there." And he says, "You're not coming." I said, "No." He got pissed. He didn't call me back, anything. And then after 2 years, he called me again, not him, his assistant, and he said, "Hey, Peter, do you want to come to Paris? I've got some movie for you." I said, "Sure, of course." Now I'm just like, I'm free, and so I got there, and it was a movie with Jet Li, and he said, "Hey, Peter, just like show me something." And I said, "I do judo, so I cannot show you something. I need a partner." And he said, "Okay, do something." So I did some stupid stuff. And then Jet Li came to me, and he was like, I'm 6'7", I'm a big guy. And he was like, half of me, and just like, Luke told me, "Hey, Peter, we cannot get you and him into one camera." So I didn't get it. I don't know if it was the reason, but yeah, it was pretty funny. And it was great because he helped me with motivation. Otherwise, I wouldn't learn English. I wouldn't get there. I wouldn't go to LA. I wouldn't stay there for some time, and I wouldn't be doing directing movies.
Well, and clearly it was no big deal that you skipped out on that movie Gladiator, because no one ever really saw it. No one knows what that is. But no, that's great, and it's amazing that you learned English in 2 years. I'm still working on my own English, so yeah, good kudos to you on that. But I mean, it's cool that you actually went to the next level, because you could have just remained an actor and you became a writer director. Tell us just briefly, because I still want to get to Medieval, but I want to talk about your first two films that you wrote and directed. Kajanek, if I pronounce it right. And I hope I did.
Kainek.
Kajinek and Ghoul.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, when I was in LA, my father called me that I should go back, to Prague to star in a film we were producing. So I got here, and he set up a company in 1992, and he was producing movies. So I joined him, and then I wrote this first movie, Kainek, the script, and we couldn't find a director. And my partner told me, "Hey, Peter, you should do it, because when you're talking to all these directors, I see that you have an idea how to do it." So I said, "Okay, I'm gonna do it." So that's how it was. And I filmed it. I was really lucky because it had the highest box office, ever for a thriller here. Yeah, it was very successful. So I started to think about directing another movie, which I also wrote. It was a found footage horror movie. I shot it in 2011 when it was like very hot market for found footage movies. And I finished it in a year. But then I met with Rob Cohen in LA, and he told me, "Hey, Peter, you have to change this, that." He introduced me to some other people, producers, and I was changing this for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And then he was, because they said for the big distribution in US, you need to change this, that. So I was doing it. And then, it was.
And that was the movie that Rob came on as producer as he was giving you all that advice.
Yeah. And it's just like it was, meant well, but, the train with found footage was, going too fast,
Sure.
And suddenly it was like, nobody wanted to watch found footage movie. But I already had that, it was released in 2015. And it was still the highest box office in the Czech Republic for horrors of all time. So it was also super cool. And it helped me, also to get money for my movie Medieval Now. So, and that's what I've spent like basically 11 years on, from the first idea of the movie. Right. Medieval. And basically, that was like, it started there, and, here we are.
I know it's a really boring question. I'm sure you've answered a million times, but tell us what gave you the idea for Medieval to tell the story of the 15th century Czech warrior Jan Žižka, who went up against the armies of the Teutonic Order and the Holy Roman Empire.
That was actually, my partner from, who wrote Kainek, the first movie with me. And he came to me that he has a script and he would like to do it, and I read it. It was about Jan Žižka because it was from his youth, because he's known like a hero from, he was around 60 years old. So this one, it's about he's 35. So I read it. I thought like I wouldn't want to use the script, but I would like to do a movie about it, So we started to negotiate, talk about it, and then we started, to work on the other scripts. And then it ended up, after several, different scripts, I decided to do it on my own, and I wrote it. And this is the film as it is now.
How long did it take you to rewrite it?
The first idea when he came to me, it was 2011, right after I finished my, shooting of Ghoul. And basically, we were rewriting it since that, So it was like, it was brutal until 2018 when we were shooting. So I had like, really like 100 versions of the script, and it was like 7 totally completely different scripts. So from the original script, there is nothing, so it's completely different story.
And did you rewrite by yourself or with your partner?
I did rewrite it on my own, on myself, the last versions, like last 4 or 5 years before we were doing it together, with these writers, Marek Debesh and Michal Petruch. Then later on, Petr Bok, Kevin Bernadette was helping me, and just like there was a lot of people helping me. And then at the end, I decided just like, that I really have to do it on my own. And and I spent like, several years working on it.
Doing the research for a project like this seems really daunting because you've got a historical figure with a story that you want to tell that's rooted in history, but it's a time in history where there wasn't so much written down per se. So what kind of research were you able to pull off to get this complex royal story going that is then rooted in this uprising of the villagers?
It was difficult, but, I had a great historian. He was helping me with that. He's, just like really one of the best here and a specialist for this era. And basically, I was trying to find anything about him, and especially from this period of time. So I found out mainly that he was a badass mercenary. He was also, just like a thief, and just like he was working for the king, and then he became to be this never defeated general, one of 7 never defeated generals of all time, like the Genghis Khan or Alexander the Great. So I was trying to find all the details, and I found them, and I found something about his family, something about the people here, peasants, the kings. Political situation was pretty clear because it was like year 1402, and everybody was kidnapped at that time. Kings, and people, like, just like that was normal. That was just to get power or money, ransom, anything, just like they kidnap people. So that was a habit at those times. So yeah, I mean, it was difficult, but I found some things which really happened, and I used them in the movie.
And then there was innovation. I mean, the war wagon that people could see in the trailer, this isn't a spoiler, like the innovation Jan used was really interesting. So seeing just the battles that were fought, but was cool, but some of the innovation, the war wagon, and we'll talk about that scene a little more later, but I was really impressed with that. I want to talk about your writing habit for a second. When you sit down to write, how important is outlining to your process, if you outline?
Yeah, I do, but it's very difficult for me to write something short. So always when I just start writing, just like getting some ideas, I end up with 20, 30, 40 pages. So
sure.
It's like, because I gotta get into details to understand, what's the potential of it. Then I have to go back and I have to write like 2 pages, just the structure of the story to understand, if that works, and if you can describe the story in 2 sentences, if it's too complicated or not enough complicated. But yeah, I always want to spend some time with this, but I usually start with like 20 pages.
And then when you sit down to write, do you give yourself a page count to hit each day, or do you give yourself a certain amount of hours that you want to sit down to write for?
When I start writing, I just get into the mood, and I'm writing, and I cannot stop. I have to finish it, just like, I'm writing overnight, sleeping several hours, but, just like then immediately first thing in the morning, I had to start writing again. And then I have some days when I just I cannot write because it's just like, I don't know, it would take too long. So I rather do something else, and then I come back to that.
So you're talking essentially about writer's block. What do you do when you get writer's block? Is it really just a matter of taking a break, taking some time off to think about things away from the computer?
Basically. Yeah.
That's what most writers do. Now, there was a lot of ways that you could have done a film like this about a Czech hero, but you decided to make it English language. Tell us about that decision to have broader appeal.
I started with a Czech version of the movie. The budget was still very high for the movie, even if it was one quarter of the budget, of the current budget. But it was really hard, and for the Czech audience, it would be perfect, like in Czech language.
Sure.
But I still did the dubbing now, so it's gonna look like we shot it in Czech almost. But yeah, so then I decided, that if we want to do it, and if it should be commercially successful, we have to do it in English. Because also another reason was I wanted to show everybody how great hero we have, how beautiful land is the Czech Republic, how many castles we have, the nature and everything. Prague, to show medieval Prague, because Prague is it's one of the best cities, I would say, and many tourists want to come to Prague to see Prague in medieval times. It's something about it, So I wanted to show everything.
It was a good way to get that story out to the world. So I mean, it was a good choice for sure. And the forest and all the scenery and the castles really do look beautiful. So I mean, it was great to see that as well. Tell us about the casting of Michael Caine as Lord Boris. It was great to see him on screen, and must have been a dream for you to work with an actor like Michael Caine. How did that come about?
That was a dream, of course. I would never imagine, when I was writing the script, that we could get Michael Caine. But of course, I wanted him, and I was writing the part for him. Because always, when you write some part, you can choose, you're writing it for somebody or for anybody, but you can picture somebody in the part. And I was picturing, Michael Caine. And basically, that happened right after Ben Foster said yes, because it was very tough, getting Ben Foster on board. And then 1 week after that, basically when Ben Foster said yes, I called to my, producing partner, Cassian Elbas, who is, living in LA. And I told him, hey, I want to try Michael Caine. And he said, okay, no way. He's not going to do it. I have done 100 movies, over 100 movies. I come from Great Britain. I know his family. Just like, there's no way. It was my dream to work with him, and it never happened.
Right.
I said, okay, I still want to, send him an offer. So we sent him an offer, and then he called me. Basically, I was at my cottage, and I saw a unknown number, and I answered it, and he said, hello, this is Michael Caine. And I was like, wow.
That's
and
crazy.
He said, you've got lovely screenplay, and I want to do it. I'm looking forward to doing it with you. And I was like, I couldn't speak. I really couldn't speak. So then I called it to this producer, and he was in shock. And then I got a MMS from him, a picture of him, Cassian, with Michael Caine. Cassian was 13, and Cassian was, Michael Caine was like already a very famous actor.
Right.
And he told me it took 50 years.
Wow.
To become my dream real. And I would never imagine that it would happen with you, a boy from an Eastern Europe.
It's wild. And he was really great in it. I mean, you could tell that he wanted to be in it, and he took it seriously. I want to get into kind of the spoilers and the nitty-gritty of the filmmaking, but just before we do, what was the budget and schedule?
The budget was like close to 20 million US dollars.
So 20 million US, but spent in Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, and it's Czech Republic. It used to be Czechoslovakia. Now, we were separated in, like 1989.
Yes.
And it's Czech Republic now.
Czech Republic, pardon me.
Okay. No problem.
Well, so I want to get into the spoilers of Medieval, and I'm curious, there's so much ground to cover of Jan. What were some left turns? What were some things that you really wanted to be in the movie, just on the page, that never were even shot, but for a while you're like, yeah, we're gonna have this big scene of X?
Okay, I'm gonna come back a little bit to the previous, question, because
of course
we made it for 20 million, but it was only because it was done here in the Czech Republic, and we had all the castles, everything, available. If we shot it in the US, it would be 80 million.
Oh, yeah.
Really, seriously, it was just like, just like we couldn't shoot it anywhere else than here. So there was, and we know it here. So we, just like everybody wanted to help us. So we got, all the castles and everything, for much better price and so on. And back to the other question. Basically, when I was talking to Ben Foster about scenes from the movie. We were going through them, and I was explaining him how I'd like to do it, what I see here, there. He was explaining me how he feels, and we were just like getting rid of some dialogues, and he said, I don't have to say this. I don't have to say that. I said, yeah, you don't have to. If we understand what, this from your face, you don't have to do it. So we were going through it, and then I added one more scene. He said, hey, I'd like to have some, even bigger action somewhere. And I said, okay, I'm gonna create something for you. So I put him on a horse in the first scene. I think it's also in a trailer. And, he's riding and shouting, and then he's hitting people. It was really, really great scene. And it wasn't there in the script before we started, just working on it, with Ben. So that was one of those. And later on, also, when I got Matthew Good, he wanted, a scene with Michael Caine. And actually, I knew it, that every actor who's going to be this, villain in the movie, and he's going to want to be with Michael Caine in one room and have a special scene with him. So I wrote this scene, between them. And I had a problem to place it in the movie later on, because it was a very long scene and I was writing it, and they were both absolutely awesome. Michael, Matthew Good, they were like, it was beautiful. But it was like 5 minutes. And I was like, when I was watching the whole movie, I was like, no, we cannot stay there. It's unbelievable. It's impossible. It's just like, we cannot a 40.
Right.
And then I cut it, trim it, and it's there, but it's short, but it's there.
I mean, if you're going to have Michael Caine in a movie, everybody's going to want to be in a movie with Michael Caine in the scene.
Exactly.
I forgot to ask. So you told us the budget, and every single cent of it you could see on screen. The movie has very high production value. But how long was your schedule? How long did you shoot for?
We shot for 54 days.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was, even that was tough, because we had so many action scenes and also a lot of stars in the movie. And it was hard to handle everything. So it was super tough. And we also had a lot of fights underwater.
Well, I was going to say that, like, you come out swinging in the beginning of the movie. So folks, we're in the spoiler section now officially. So podcast listeners in iTunes and Spotify, people watching the Backstory Magazine YouTube page of this Zoomcast, where you could see us do the interview. If you have not yet seen Medieval, it's in theaters on September 9th, and eventually it'll be on digital and VOD, of course, too, but try and see it on the big screen, put on a mask, go see it safely if you can. But we are getting into the spoilers now. So press pause if you haven't yet seen it. And if you want to avoid spoilers, and then come back and listen to the rest of the interview. Now that we're in the spoilers, you're doing the typical thing in an action movie where you put an action scene at the beginning of the movie to get the audience interested. And, people are being shoved into the water off this narrow road. And I'm just like, oh, that's cool. But for you, it's not good enough to just shove them in the water. After they're pushed in the water, someone jumps into the water to stab them underwater as well. Like, it's not just enough that they were pushed into the water, and you're doing all this underwater shooting. Tell us about that. Was any of it on location, or was it just all on, underwater sets that you were constructing?
Yeah, it was actually, most of it was on the location. And
it was on location, actually in... Wow.
Yeah, but we had, for each actor or stuntman underwater, we had to have a special, one scuba diver, who was taking care of him, because they had armor on them, so they were sinking immediately. It was, it was dangerous. It was very dangerous. And it was a little bit cold. Another reason, just like safety as possible. I wanted to show something else, because I've never seen this in a movie. So I wanted to have something, special, especially because, Jan Žižka was one of the greatest innovators, of these kind of fighting techniques. He created, tanks and many other traps, and this was one of them, just like fighting, just like pushing people into water. They had armor. That was enough, but sometimes some of them could get out of it, survive. So there was another guy who was, finishing them. One
of the challenges as a writer, especially for action, is you want to sell your screenplay and get actors interested. And especially when you're writing and directing, some of the moves in your head before you even coordinate with stunt coordinators, storyboard artists, pre-visualization. And there's this challenge of how much description do you put on the page of your action? Because if you go blow by blow, it'll be a very long read for the script, and actors might get bored. But at the same time, you want to intrigue them with some of the innovative stuff that you're going to do. So how did you navigate that process on the page? Some writers have one version in a draft to attract talent and financing, and then a different, more detailed version for the production draft. How did you do it?
It was pretty similar. By the way, this is great question, because I have always problem with describing too much in action, and it's just like I cannot help myself.
Everybody has that problem. It's tough.
This is gonna be, great, like this and that. And then, somebody told me, hey, agents, managers, they just skip the fights. They read it till the fight, and then they see at the end, hey, this one died, this one survived, and then what is next? So I was like, oh, okay, I'll make it short, So I made it shorter, and just like the idea of the fights, and and I mean, it's definitely much better for readers. So I think it's right not to over describe everything. And then in the production, script, I described everything what I could, but also at the end of the day, everything was a little bit different, because I had it in my head. I saw the set, and I had to change it, and I couldn't forward it to some people. Of course, I kept the choreography, but it was just shot differently, and So it was created on the set.
How much pre-production time did you have, and did you have any rehearsal time with your actors?
I was rehearsing a lot, but I wanted more time. It was like 2 months, but unfortunately, I didn't have actors yet. So I was hiring actors, and I was waiting to get Jan Žižka, Ben Foster, and once I got him, I immediately hired everybody else who were, they were ready for that, but we were waiting for the lead to be sure that we can really shoot it. And and then they started to work with stunt team. We had a great stunt team, and they were just doing all the choreography together with me, and just like I was, talking to them every day, changing stuff to make it more brutal, because I didn't want fights, which were not real. I wanted something really as real as possible, and so that's why it was like more brutal without technique. And so that was like I was always telling the fencers like, no, don't use this, don't use I don't want it there. Just like give him a head, punch him, use the sword as they would use it, but not too much technique, especially if you're in a small space, and everybody is around you. You don't have time to do that, just like right. You cannot do tricks, too many, just some small ones, but it was a process.
Ooh, hey kids, I'm jumping in really quick to remind you that Backstory just turned 10. That's right. We've made it a decade. We're here. We've survived, and we couldn't have done it without your help. And, we want to keep doing it. So your support means everything to us. And now is a perfect time to subscribe, because we just released our big summer issue. That's right. We have Emmy contenders ranging from Stranger Things, Barry, Better Call Saul, What We Do in the Shadows, Station 11, and Hacks. We also have summer movies. We have an interview with actor Glenn Powell, who plays Hangman in Top Gun Maverick. We have John Carpenter, the director of The Thing, on its 40th anniversary. Looking back, there are so many great articles to read in Backstories. Huge summer issue. There's also scripts to read. I know you'll dig it. If you've never read us before, you could, of course, test drive us by reading the free issue, which you could find at backstory.net on a desktop or laptop, or via our iPad app, Backstory. And look, after you check us out and test drive us, I hope you'll consider becoming a subscriber. And just to sweeten the deal, I want to offer you discount coupon code SAVE5. That's SAVE and the number 5, and that will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription. All you got to do is enter that code at backstory.net, and it'll get you access to both the iPad login and over at backstory.net on a desktop or laptop as well. Look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and iTunes and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of all these Zoomcasts. That's right. You could watch us do these interviews, because they were Zooms that I've put on YouTube on the Backstory Magazine YouTube page. It would really mean a lot to me to have you support my passion project. So thanks for considering becoming a subscriber. But now let's jump right back into our conversation with writer-director Petr Jkl about his latest film, which is in theaters now, Medieval. One of the things that I'm sure was difficult for you in your storytelling is that on the one hand, you're telling the story of Jan, but at the same time, you need to educate your audience with some of the real history. And you have a lot to explain in your exposition. There's 2 popes, and our heroes are deciding to provide safe passage to just one of them. And then, by the end of the movie, they're looking to go to the King of France, to bring Catherine with them. So there was a lot of history to convey, and it's difficult for a lot of writers to figure out ways to do exposition. What were your difficulties for how you were going to convey your exposition? Because, it just kind of, it felt very natural. It would come and go as a part of their conversation. But I'm sure it could be tough to find the right place to put that in.
Absolutely. This was actually one of the biggest problems of the script. It was always very complicated. And it was also the biggest problem of the first cut. When I had the first cut, it was just too complicated. And, Czech people, they understand the history. So it was fine for them. But right. I had to do it for everybody. So I got just some places, pieces about the politics, and made it easier. It has everything, but they don't talk about it too much and too long, and it's enough. And Steve Rosenblum, who is an editor of Braveheart, he was editing this movie with me, and I listened to whatever he said, and
Sure.
he told me one thing. He told me that every 10 minutes you have to remind audience what is going on, what is the goal, what is the mission. And I was reminding this through the politics, so I was using it, and we were really using it this way, and it worked perfectly, and that's just like, and at the end of the day, it's actually better also for the Czech audience now, because it's not a lesson of history.
Right.
It's entertaining. You want to feel emotional at the end of the movie, and that's the most important for me. Just like get emotions there, and you cannot get them if you deliver too much information.
This is a very ambitious shoot for your third film, and what I was really impressed with was how much outdoor shooting you did. Whether it was day or night, you were in the woods a lot. You were in a cave that I'm guessing was a real cave, not a set. You tell me, what were the lessons that you learned for such an extended outdoor shoot? Because I really respect films that do that. I don't feel like people do it enough. I could see a version of this that was more confined to the king's castle and, certain courtrooms and stuff like that. But you're really outdoors for most of the movie.
Actually, when I was writing it, I didn't think about it too much. Of course, I knew that this is going to be difficult. This is going to be very expensive. But then I finish it, I look at it and I said, oh my God, we are not once in the same location. And we are not. Really, we are, and it's just like, this is exceptional, because I just like, I didn't know that it's gonna be this hard, just like when I looked at the script, I said, okay, we have to use some locations twice, it's just like, no, we are not. So I found out that's why it looks bigger, because it's just like you go from one location to another and again another, and you never come back even to the same room. So it's just like, that's something what helps the film, but it was also very expensive and difficult, and that's why we had 54 days, and we were traveling all the time. Then I was also trying to find places around each other, so we were just like, they were close in the forest, but never really close, but they were as close as possible.
I mean, but you still have to get your actors out there, to the woods, wherever you are, however far deep you are in. And so that's not easy as well. But tell us about the cave shooting, because not only was it a regular cave shoot, with a bunch of torches, you're also doing an underwater dive in a cave as well. I'm guessing that had to be a set, but you tell me.
We never shot in a studio.
Never. Okay, not even for the underwater cave stuff. Wow.
No, only actually we hired a swimming pool for 2 days at the end of or 3 days. And we were shooting some underwater stuff with actors in those, just like in that, pool. And there was a small cave, how where, they were, Catherine and Zizka were, sleeping. So, but everything else was not studio.
It was great. It looked awesome. I think you needed to ground your protagonist. And it comes very late in the film, but there's a great monologue about his sister and how she was killed, and the hawk and the meaning of the hawk. Tell us about figuring out that was going to be a good character moment for him, and also where in the movie you would drop it, because I guess it really is this great scene of intimacy for this warrior to kind of let his guard down with Catherine.
Absolutely. This was one of the most difficult parts of the movie, where I was just like, how to use flashbacks. Basically, there are dreams, some kind of, flashbacks. And I had this, story of the lead, who, like something happened to him when he was young. Actually, anybody can think it was his sister, but in my world, it was his, just like friend and some kind of like love.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what their relationship was. And I know that his father is then explaining to him that this is the rule of the king, and the king has the right to kill anyone they want. And because his father was explaining it, I assumed it was his sister, but Thanks for
Yeah, yeah.
clarifying that. So
But
in your mind, it's his friend.
it's his friend
Okay.
who he loved. And basically that's why he didn't want to love anybody else, you know, and just like because
Sure.
also he didn't want to be hurt by death of somebody who he loves. Then I was using flashbacks in the first cut. We put these flashbacks like, you know, they were at 6 places, you know. It was like here, there, and you know, just like, and then I thought like, you know, do we really need it? Do we really need it? Maybe it's just like not helping at this moment, you know. So I came back, you know, and I reduced it, you know, and then I used it much later in the movie. And actually, I started to use it at the time, you know, when he is hurt, which is perfect moment for these kind of things, because when you have fever, you usually have these kind of bad dreams, you know, and so I needed the moment, you know, when it starts. And I also shot some other scenes, you know, with about this story, which I didn't use at the end because, you know, they are there, you know, but just like short, you know, cuts, you know, in those flashbacks. They were cool scenes, but, you know, at the end of the day, I think this serves better to the story of him, you know, and just supports him at the right moment in the story.
This was also a trial by fire for you for these big action sequences. And we were talking about it a little earlier. The battle wagon sequence was just great. You know, there was a structure to it. It wasn't just a whole bunch of people fighting. They start by smoking out the area so that the enemy didn't see everything that they were doing as they were encroaching on their flanks on either side. They had the battle wagon innovation of the walls coming up and coming down to protect them from the arrows. It was a really cool sequence. What were the challenges of shooting that? Because you really had a lot going on.
Basically, I explained what I need from the scene, and then I gave it to the stunt coordinator to prepare the fights, you know, and I got there 2 days later and he showed me what he has, you know, and it was really not good because they didn't have enough time for anything.
Sure.
And I was like, oh my God, I cannot shoot this like that, you know. So I came back home, you know, and I said, okay, I have to create something what is going to change the mood, the atmosphere of the scene. And I was thinking, what Jan Žižka would do at that time, you know, and what would help him in this situation. And that was the smoke. And I created, you know, pieces of hay, you know, and smoke and all that. And it helped so much the scene, you know, that it's just like sometimes some bad things can bring something better, because if it was great, I wouldn't use it, you know, and it would be worse. It would not be as good as this. You know?
Yeah, because I mean, as you were talking about in your own judo experience, the whole concept of it being, you know, partially battle in the mind before it has a physical angle to it. That's exactly what was so cool about that scene, is that they were outsmarting the enemy first and foremost before their brutal engagement. So that's what I liked about it. That's wild to hear that it was something last minute. It's always fun to hear about rewrites on set. Were there any other major rewrites where you really needed to kind of go off into your own zone for a little while to reevaluate something like that? Because I love hearing those stories.
I think just like sometimes if you see something, you get some ideas. And sometimes it's impossible because it's too late. You cannot do it, you know, but sometimes you get some ideas which are not that difficult and they can help it out. And we had some places like this, you know, in the movie, and I changed stuff, you know, on the set, which is a nightmare for somebody because, you know, they don't have this, they don't have that, they have to bring it. And another piece, you know, which I changed was a scene with a lion.
I was going to say, like, not only are you doing this crazy outdoor shoot with battles, you throw a lion in. So please continue.
I insisted that it's going to be real lion. I said, okay, we have to train a lion. And just like it has to be the lion who can do what I want. And of course, I want a lot of stuff, you know. I don't want to say what exactly is in the movie, but the lion didn't want to cooperate. And it's just like he didn't want to do anything. What he was doing when we were not shooting, he was trying to attack real actors. So he was trying to grab them, and it was really dangerous because once you are on a set and you forget about crazy animal lying in a cage, you get too close to the cage, and wow, and he attacks. And he attacked several times, it's just like we had some people staying there and not letting you close to the cake. And I just decided, to change this scene, on the set, because the lion absolutely didn't cooperate. And then at the end of the day, he did something, but the rest we had to do in VFX, so we helped him to do stuff. But it was like another thing which is just like, and it's actually better now than what I had prepared before.
Hear that, kids? You just got to get a lion on your set that is willing to work, not some crazy lion. So there's some sound advice. Editing is the last stage of storytelling. And you're right. You're with this very prolific editor. What were some of the lessons you learned about medieval in the editing room? And what were some of the other scenes that you cut? You told us about one earlier, but it's always interesting to hear.
We had, just like we have one scene which we didn't use. And it was like kind of a romantic scene between Jan Žižka and Catherine, Sophie Lowe, who is great. I love her because, she's a beautiful person, and he helped the movie a lot. And they had this scene, and it was a scene which I was pushing from the beginning of the shooting till the end, but I shot it at the end, and I like it a lot. But the scene has completely different mood than the rest of the movie. So I couldn't use it. I'm going to use it in bonuses later on somewhere, but
describe it. What was it?
It was like, basically they were on the way to the castle, just him and her, and she was picking up lavenders in the morning, because you could eat them. He was trying to find some other food, he found some eggs, so he ate them, and then they look at each other. They had a couple of jokes at each other about their past. It was funny. But it's just like, it was like the mood of the film is different. And suddenly it felt like, from a different movie. And I tried to put it there, but, whoever saw it came to me and said, hey, what was this scene? It's just like, it's good, but it's just like, it doesn't fit there. What is it? So I didn't use it. We both liked the scene with Steve Rosenblum. And he always told me, like, when I was trying to get something there, he told me, do you really need it? Do you really need it? Forget about it. You shot it. You spend money on it. But do you really need it? We got rid of so many stuff that I would show you, like, how beautiful scenes were cut out of movies I did, But it was always because, it helped the movie. And it's really true. And you have to forget about what you shot. You just need to pick the scenes which are the best for the movie. Even there are some scenes which were shot not as beautiful as the other scenes which are not there. Also, another thing which is very important for me and which helped me a lot too was, like Steve said, that the best movie based on true events is fiction, because you have to keep the idea of it. You have to keep the, everything what is possible, but you have to use some elements to create the story right for 2 hours. And that's what they did in Braveheart. They just like, they have these blue colors on their faces, which everybody knows this movie for. It was 1,000 years before the Braveheart, story. And then it was another place, when Mel Gibson has, a relationship with the French princess. It couldn't happen, it didn't happen. And many other stuff, but he is tortured to death at the end. And everything else is kind of right. And we are much closer to the reality with this movie. But I still sometimes, when I was like, no, this has to be exactly like this. It was minor detail. I said, no, why? And he was right. It doesn't have to be exactly like that.
Right. You have to tell an entertaining story. And on a historical fiction, you want to be as accurate as you can. But at the same time, you want your audience emotionally involved. And what you were just talking about, cutting these scenes that you loved, it's the kill your darlings concept. And it's also that concept of, as they used to say when movies were not digital, when they were on film cans, being transported around, people would say, if this scene bounced out of the truck, would your audience still understand the movie without it? If the answer is yes, you should cut the scene because it's just taking up space. So I totally understand what you're saying. Tell us about constructing your ending. You could have ended this film a lot of different ways. You had the Kingsmen turning on him. You had Jan's men turning on him and just going for the bounty with Catherine. You have the death of Catherine. And then you show us that, Jan perseveres. There was a lot going on. I'm curious what other endings you had considered before arriving at this exact ending.
Actually, this ending, which is there was only a reshoot I had. I had 2 days of the reshoot.
Interesting. Okay.
I finished the movie and it ended, like with people coming together, big song. That song is actually a real song from the history. All the Hussites were singing this song before the fights, all the fights. And they were, known for this because enemies were afraid of this song. Right. But heard it, they knew this is bad. And then I felt, I want more hope. I want really more hope. And this end was written in the script. But, it was just like, I couldn't shoot it. It couldn't fit into 54 days. I needed one more day, and I didn't have that. So then I decided to do the reshoot, and keep the hope. And somehow, because we are starting with Michael Caine's words like, tyranny, and all these bad words. And then at the end, Ben Foster, like Žižka, who was inspired by Michael Caine's character, what to do, and how to see people with these positive words. And I think that's the hope. And especially in these days with the war in Ukraine, this film, it's about fighting for freedom. And it's about hope, that if people do help each other, they can change things. And I think I'm very happy that, this pandemic stopped distribution of Medieval. And it was like, it's supposed to be 2 years ago, distributed 2 years ago.
Okay.
And now it's much better time. Much better because now we know this was happening 600 years ago, and it's happening now, and it's gonna be happening in 603 years from now. Hopefully we are still here.
And just to make sure I got it right, the reshoot was essentially the villagers carrying the dead body of Catherine. Was that essentially?
No. It was just the wagons, wall, the wagon wall at the end. Žižka riding on a horse.
Oh, okay.
That part, the Catherine and all the people coming together, it used to be there from the
start. Okay, that makes sense. Well, I know we're starting to run out of time, but I guess one thing that I want to end on is, what was your toughest scene, both as a writer and as a director? What was the scene on the page that you kept coming back to over and over again, and how did you creatively rise to the challenge? And then same thing, what was your toughest scene to shoot?
Absolutely, the toughest scene to shoot was when Žižka is meeting rebels in a rebel camp. And, I rewrote this scene 50 times. And it still was not good enough because they had to explain many things. They were explaining this, and we are here because of that and that and that.
Right, a lot of exposition.
And why Žižka is there, a lot of exposition. And then I was going through this scene with Ben Foster, and he was telling me, I don't understand it. I don't get it. And I said, yeah, okay, it's a little bit complicated. I changed it again for the shooting with him. Then we got to the set, and it was so difficult to shoot, because he said, hey, I still don't get it, and this, and and suddenly we end up with something what I thought it's kind of okay, but then we got into editing. Oh my God, we were editing this scene again 50 times, and I was like, why I didn't change it in a script, because now we would not be sitting here spending days on this scene,
So it was that classic story of you were mad at the writer, and it turns out the writer is you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just like it was a problem in the script, and I didn't solve it there, so I had to solve it later on. I found a way how to do it, but it took me so much time that it was unbelievable.
Well, so aside from that scene, what was the other scene on the page that you really had to battle, because clearly you thought that one was okay and you didn't realize it wasn't until you were in production? So what was the scene that was most difficult for you to put down on the page?
Probably it was basically all the scenes with where Matthew Good and Til Schweiger as the King Sigismund and Lord Rosenberg, talking about politics. Because when I started to write these scenes, they were not talking, they were not saying words as what they wanted. They were just like, everything was just like, pretending, this could be that. And then at the end, it was beautiful scene, but nobody knew what was going on. And I was like reading it over and over. I was like, these abstract words, they won't work. They will work just for certain parts, So I rewrote it several times, and then I found a way how abstract it could be, just to get the idea what is going on. And then, just like we went, faster to the plot, to the thing, just like what they had to discuss, But it was difficult, I rewrote it so many times.
What's next? What are you working on next?
I wrote some stories, which I like, I like something different, I would like to do something different. But I'm pretty tired from directing at the moment. And I found out that I do movie every 5 years. Now it's like 7 because 2 years was the pandemic. But it's 5 years. It's always like it was 5 years. So I think I've got some time to do another movie, and I get some offers, but right now I feel like I need a little bit more time with my family. I've got 2 beautiful daughters, 11 and 14. I want to spend more time with them and my wife. And I'm producing at the moment, which is something what I like, and it doesn't take me that much time like that.
So the last thing I heard about, and tell me if this is correct, that there's a video game of Medieval that is coming out.
I mean, I always thought once I started to do the movie, I got this idea that maybe it would be a great video game. So we started to work on it, and basically it's a video game where we use footage of the film, we recut it, and so people will enjoy the movie differently from the different point of view. Plus, it's a combination with video game, so you can play the story of the movie. And we're gonna have, a 3D character of Michael Caine, which was unbelievable, because when I offered him, I didn't believe that he's gonna do it, but he asked his nephews, and they said, "Hey, Grandpa, you have to do it. You have to be in this video game." And it's hack and slash. It's gonna be fun. I think the graphics looks really cool. And it's going to be coming in the first half of the next year.
Wow. So when did the production on the video game begin? Was it while you were shooting?
Actually, it was right after the shooting, 4 years ago.
Okay.
And and it was, just like we were slowly developing the story for the game. And now it's gonna be ready, so it's exciting.
That's awesome. I'll keep an eye out for that. That sounds amazing. Well, congrats on getting Medieval into Cannes and out to the world. It's a hell of an outdoor shoot. I mean, it's beautiful to look at. It's absolutely fascinating material, and I wasn't aware of the history of it either. So I mean, it was definitely a story that has a new feel to it, at least for me as an American. And congrats on getting it done, Peter. And I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thanks a lot for inviting me to this show. Thank you.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Special thanks again to writer-director Petr Jkl for being so generous with his time and coming down to chat about his latest film, Medieval. It's in theaters now, and eventually, obviously, it'll come onto VOD and rentals. So if you feel safe masking up, go check it out. Of course, while you're surfing around online, I hope you also check out Backstory Magazine. We just turned 10, folks. We lasted a decade, and we couldn't have done it without your support. And we just published our huge summer issue. It has Emmy contenders ranging from Stranger Things, Barry, Better Call Saul, Hacks, What We Do in the Shadows, and Station 11. We have actor Glenn Powell, who plays Hangman in Top Gun Maverick, talking about what it was like to be in that incredible film and his process. And he's also a screenwriter. There's scripts to read in Backstory. There's also an interview with director John Carpenter on the 40th anniversary of The Thing. There's so many great pieces in our summer issue, and we're continuing to add to it. So it would be fantastic to have you as a subscriber. And of course, to sweeten the deal, if you want to subscribe now, you could use discount coupon code SAVE5. That's SAVE and the number 5, and that will save you $5 off a 1-year subscription to Backstory. You just enter that code into the shopping cart at backstory.net, and it will give you access to both the iPad app and the website. So look, it would really mean a lot to me to have my podcast listeners and iTunes and Spotify and my YouTube watchers of the Backstory Magazine YouTube page, which is where all these Zoomcasts go. That's right. These are Zoom interviews. So you could watch us have these discussions on the Backstory Magazine YouTube page. It would really mean a lot to me to have you consider supporting my passion project. So thanks for considering becoming a subscriber. The Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith podcast is a copyright of Unlikely Films Incorporated in 2022. All rights reserved. Folks, if you want to find me on social media, you could always find me as Yo Goldsmith on Twitter or Backstory_mag on Twitter. You could also find those same accounts on Instagram. So Yo Goldsmith on Instagram or Backstory_mag on Instagram. You could check out our Facebook fan page, or you could even send us an email at backstoryletters@gmail.com. That inbox gets a little cluttered sometimes, so I apologize if I don't respond immediately, but I love hearing what folks have to say, and I promise you I will do my darndest to get to your message. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, the publisher of Backstory Magazine and the host of the Q&A, thanking you for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.